Hello, everybody. My name is Victor. This is the inaugural podcast. So thank you, sir, for being here. You want to give yourself a quick introduction? That way everybody knows who you are.
Sure. My name is Nathan Magsig. I'm a supervisor here in Fresno County. Lived in the Fresno County area for most of my life. Went to Clovis schools, had the pleasure of serving as a council member and mayor of Clovis for about 16 years, and I'm finishing up my second term and will start my third term on the Board of Supervisors in January.
Awesome. Thank you. We talked a little bit outside. We played a little bit of the golf. We won't talk about how we did, but I mentioned that I looked up that you were actually a youth pastor at one point. So how did you get into politics, and how did you go from a youth pastor to, a mayor at one point, and now, what you're doing?
So I grew up in a Christian home. My father was a pastor, and I actually come from a line of pastors. My great-grandfather was a Methodist pastor. My grandfather was a Nazarene pastor, and my father was a Quaker pastor. So grew up in the church, and Christianity has always been a big part of my DNA. And so out of that, there was an opportunity for me to serve as a youth pastor when I was in college, and so I did that from 1995 till 1999. I'm one who believes that everyone's been given gifts, and I have many of the similar gifts that my fathers before me had, and I love people. I love talking about Jesus. I've got no problem doing that. And so it seemed like a natural fit while I was in college to also be involved in youth ministry, because there was a church, New Covenant Community Church, at the time that was in need of someone to help out with both high school, junior high, and college youth ministry. So it was a perfect fit, and I was happy to do it.
Awesome. Yeah, I became a Christian about 4 or 5 years ago. Actually, no, 6 years ago. I forgot. A few years ago, my wife kind of introduced me to it. Obviously, it's awesome. I love Jesus. And moving here to Fresno, we didn't know anybody, so having that a church community that's kind of grown, it's awesome. Was there like one particular event that got you into politics?
So when I was a teenager, I was paying close attention to what was going on both at local, state, and federal level, and I was disappointed in a lot of the leadership that I saw at the elected office level in the 80s and 90s, and so I really felt led to get involved in government and politics. And really in politics, you have to have a pedigree, and what I mean by that is if you don't grow up within it, you have no network. And it's very difficult just to break into politics. You either have to be a celebrity, you have to be someone who has a lot of wealth, or you have to have a tremendous network to get involved. But in my case, I had none of those things. Being a pastor's kid, you grow up, you get to eat, you have lots of potlucks at church, but you don't grow up wealthy. But for me, God really opened doors. So I would speak at different churches. My involvement in youth ministry exposed me to a lot of different people, and there were individuals that had connections in the political arena. And so right when I graduated from college, I had an opportunity to go to work for the state legislature. And so I was offered a job by Scott Baugh, a job I never applied for, and for a position that I didn't even know what it did. And I was a field representative for an assembly member. I did that for about 2 years, and then I had an opportunity to become district director, and I also ran a number of campaigns and did work for the Republican caucus in Sacramento, reporting to Scott Baugh. And so to me, it's a God thing. When someone calls and offers you a job in a field that you felt led to move towards, which you've never applied for, really only God can make that arrangement. So I feel very blessed.
Yeah, absolutely. Now you mentioned that you need connections, right? Or was there a specific learning curve that you kind of went through as you got into politics without connections, money, or really a lot of experience in it?
I feel fortunate because when I started as a field representative for Assemblymember Mike Briggs, when I started with him, he goes, "Look, Nathan, I don't want you in the office. What I want you to do is meet with people in the community. And I want you to sit down with them and say very little, but introduce yourself and just say, I'm from Assemblyman Mike Briggs' office. I'm here to hear what's going on with you, and if there's any way our office can assist you." And so I was able to develop relationships with other council members, mayors. I was able to meet with business leaders, chambers of commerce, get involved with Rotaries and service clubs. The first time I had a filet mignon steak was actually when I was working for Mike Briggs, going to one of these fundraising events that I think the Rotary was putting on. And so it really opened my eyes, and it gave me an opportunity to meet many people, and that's how the network that I have today was first established.
Yeah, absolutely awesome. And then, so today you're a supervisor, right? So like I mentioned earlier, I didn't know anything about local government. You know, in high school you learn, you know, senators, congressmen, and that's really about it. So what is the role of a supervisor in the county?
So before I tell you what the role of a supervisor is in the county, if you look at government in general, you have three layers or types of government. You've got federal government, you have state government, then you have local government. And at the local level, at the state level, you've got 50 states. Each state will have boroughs or counties. We're in California, of course. California has 58 counties. And some counties are more rural, some are urban, some are suburban, and some are all three. If you look at Fresno County, there are some parts of the county that are very rural. The city of Fresno is considered very densely populated. It's the 5th largest city in the state. And then you have suburban areas as well that are here in Fresno County. So what a county supervisor does, and how it's different from like a council member or a mayor of a city, is at the Board of Supervisors, we deal with behavioral health, we deal with social services, and we also deal with public health services. Also, too, at the county level, if you think about county government, here in Fresno County, there are 10 elected officials. You have the 5 supervisors. Let's see if I can remember them all. Then you have the auditor, controller, tax collector. You have the assessor recorder. You have the elections clerk, who's James Coos. He runs elections. And then you have the district attorney, and then you have the sheriff. So those are the 10 elected officials at the county level. But the Board of Supervisors, we are the ones who actually control the purse strings for all the functions, all the operations of the county. So we just passed our county budget, $5.2 billion. A lot of the funding that we have are for social services, behavioral health services, and public health services. And while we're responsible for justice services, most of the funding we have flows through us and right to the public. Individuals who are receiving benefits, state and federal benefits, a lot of those benefits flow right through county government. So how we're different from, say, cities or special districts, while we deal with public safety services, just like local governments do, local governments don't control a jail. That's a county responsibility. Local governments don't prosecute offenders. They'll make arrests. Local police departments will. But it's the public defender who will defend them, which is a county function. It's the district attorney who will prosecute them. That's another county function. And so really the difference between city government and county government is there's so much more broad responsibility at the county level. In my district, I deal with forests. I have lake issues. I have foothill issues, rural school districts that I partner with and work with. Fresno County has more roads that we maintain than any other county in the state. And so we've got bridges that we have to deal with. So it's very complex, but very satisfying too.
Yeah, and I mean, Fresno County is humongous.
6,000 square miles, yeah.
And like you mentioned, there's rural and there's city. Is there any like specific challenges that you face in kind of balancing those two, I think, very different sectors of Fresno County?
There's always challenges. And so one of the things, I sit on a board dealing with finance, pensions, and intergovernmental affairs at the federal level. I'm vice chair of that committee. But when the federal government has mandates and mandated services that have to be provided at the local level, sometimes those services come without appropriate funding. Same thing happens at the state level. And so making sure that our local voices are heard in Sacramento and Washington, D.C. is very important. And two, about 80% of the services residents receive day in and day out come from local government. If someone is prowling around your house and you call 911, you're not going to get the National Guard coming to your house. You're going to get local law enforcement, whether it be the sheriff's department or police department. You're going to get local law enforcement responding. So challenges that we have at the local level is, from my standpoint, you have policymakers at the state and federal level that love to make laws, but they don't really get to see how those laws impact people at the local level, but I do. When individuals get frustrated with federal issues, my phone is the one that's ringing, and our Board of Supervisors, we're very active in reaching out to both state and federal government. I send out numerous letters daily supporting bills, opposing bills, and just sharing generally concerns that we have to the governor's office and the legislature and the president and Congress to make sure that they're fully informed how their decisions are impacting us at the local level. But yes, we do have challenges. And even there's 15 cities in Fresno County, and sometimes there are challenges with different cities in the county where we're at odds on issues. But it's always important for the electeds at the city level and county level to make sure that there's open dialogue, because it's better to discuss and figure out ways to solve problems than to sit there and sue one another.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that you've been in politics since the late 90s. Right?
Yep.
The world has changed since the late 90s. So how has politics changed with it?
So just how elected officials have to communicate to the public has changed drastically. When I first was running for office, you would buy time on television or cable. You would, when you would put signs up, like right now the signs that are out, they're made out of plastic. They're called Coroplast. But when I was running, you would buy 4x8 plywood sheets, and you would have to stick paper on those plywood sheets to create like your own mini billboards. And then two, direct mail was very popular. But now, today, you've got social media. The distrust of a lot of the standard networks on television, there's a lot of distrust from people who maybe are more conservative to certain networks. And so you have a much wider divide out there today. And so making sure that elected officials have an opportunity to put their perspective out there is getting more and more challenging. And so just being active on social media is critical. And so when I first got elected to the Board of Supervisors and took office in January of 2017, I started producing videos and started getting really active on both Facebook and then eventually Instagram. And I have found that that is extremely effective to do, because it's impossible to be everywhere all the time. And there's always individuals that are going to have their own ideas, their own biases, and their own opinions on what's taking place and why. And so it's important to make sure that elected officials have a medium that they can use to get accurate information out to the public.
Yeah, and like, speaking of change, I think government, or the way we perceive government, has really changed a lot, like the last 10-ish years. And like in the forefront of that has been like, government overreach versus government like inaction, right? Like how do we here in the Valley and yourself find kind of that balance, like not do too much, but step in as well when you need it? Where's that balance, and how do you try to find it?
Balance. Well, that's difficult. So I'll tell you the balance between government overreach and just liberty and freedom. What I try to explain to people is the more that government gets involved in your life, the less freedom that you have. And it's because when government grows, it means taxes go up. And when, if you look at in the 25 plus years I've been involved in government, working as an elected, we've seen Obamacare come to be, and federal government, state government getting more and more involved in health care. On the surface, sounds like a good thing. Of course, everybody should have access to health care. But challenges on the backside are, if you look at Medi-Cal reimbursement rates, a lot of hospitals have had to close their doors. Emergency rooms have had to close their doors. So while government's growing into this space, access to health care and healthcare providers is actually shrinking. So for me, I'm one who believes I like government to be local. I believe in local control. I want smaller government, and I want more liberty, and I want the public to be more responsible. So other people out there, though, don't share my opinions on how government should operate. There are some people who are in elective office who want to see government grow. They want government to be building houses for people. They want government to actually limit speech, to tag what we should say, what we should think, what's appropriate, which I completely disagree with. And so again, I'm a small government guy. So it's okay for others to have a difference of opinion, but I want to just caution your listeners and viewers right now that the more government grows, the United States, as it was founded, and the liberties and freedoms that our forefathers wanted for all of us, begins to be moved away. And the United States that was founded 200 plus years ago begins to shift into an unrecognizable direction. So how we can reverse some of these things, the public has to get more engaged. We need more entrepreneurs to step forward. We need people to run for office who say we don't need another law to make things better. What we need is less government and less regulation, and really focus on things that government should do. In my opinion, government should deal with, at the local level, we need to be building roads, we need to be building parks, we need to be building sewer plants, water plants. We need to make sure that the public is safe, and that justice is served and laws are followed. Beyond that, government shouldn't be doing a whole lot more. So again, at the local level. At the state level should also be making sure that our state is secure. When it comes to education, we should have basic things, reading, writing, and math. We should have a basic level that individuals test for to graduate out of high school. But then from there, I believe that local school boards should have a lot of liberty and freedom to maybe have more music programs, maybe have more CTE programs. But each school district and region of the state's very different. And I think it's wrong for the state of California to tell all 58 counties, this is how you're going to operate. Because what might work in the metropolitan area doesn't necessarily work in the rural parts of the state. So, yes, there are challenges. I am opinionated. The public has elected me to serve in Fresno County, and I don't hide what I believe in. And there may come a day that the residents of Fresno County believe differently than I, and then they'll not allow me to serve anymore, and that's okay.
Yeah, well, that's the awesome thing about, the country that we're in, right? If they don't agree with you, you can kind of vote it out. So I think that's a really cool aspect that a lot of places don't have. So, and yeah, you mentioned like education. I mean, I think education and government, I think that could be its own specific podcast for hours. I mean, I mentioned we have a 5-year-old who's just starting school, so that's a hard topic to talk about. Like, okay, what are we doing? Are we going to homeschool? Are we going to, send them to a school? It's difficult for sure. But
so on that topic, one thing I want to point out. So what's changed in the last 25 years? What I've seen. So my wife works at an elementary school. My perspective, when I went to school, I feared my teacher, and in a healthy fear. I also feared my parents, because I knew if I screwed up in school, and I got punished at school, they still had spanking in school, that was not bad. What was bad is when my dad found out that I screwed up in school, having to deal with the punishment I would get from my mom and dad. Well, today, teachers are not being given support by parents. So maybe Johnny gets in trouble at school. Next thing you know, you get the parents wanting to meet with the principal, and it's the teacher's fault. And what blows me away is a lot of schools are underperforming, and a lot of people point at the teachers. The person who has the primary responsibility for education of kids is actually parents, not teachers. And so what I want to see is I want to see parents get more involved in schools. I want them to become more accountable, and they need to be working with their kids and helping them to learn. But there are so many parents that actually don't have the tools necessary to even help their kids to learn. And so we're dumping more and more responsibilities on teachers. So to your question about what are you going to do with your 5-year-old and 2-year-old when your 2-year-old's ready to go to school, you and your wife need to be fully engaged, volunteer in that classroom, pour into not only your kids, but also the kids that are around your kids. That's how you're going to make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm fortunate enough that my wife actually able to stay home. And right now she's homeschooling the 5-year-old. So we'll see how long, she can do that for. It's a handful, and especially with the 2-year-old that comes up. Now I know we're on a bit of a time crunch, so I want to get you out of here on the time. But I know like one of the big topics is like forest management.
Yes.
I mentioned I'm in the National Guard, right? So I know all about wildfires and all that stuff. What's going on with forest management?
Well, I'll tell you that the last 100 years, we've seen our forests get into a condition where it's very unhealthy. And what's happened is we have way too many trees in the forest per acre than what really is sustainable. From 2010 to 2015, we had a drought in California that was pretty severe, and we saw a lot of trees get stressed. Well, out of that, bark beetles really began to proliferate the Sierra and the rest of the forest that we have here in California. Those bark beetles killed a lot of trees, because when trees don't have enough water, they're not able to produce enough sap. And so when a bark beetle bores into a tree, the defense mechanism is to push the bark beetle out using sap. Well, if they don't have enough sap, enough bark beetles will eventually get into the cadmium layer of that tree, girdle the tree, and kill it. Well, in Fresno County at one point, we had about 27 million dead trees just in Fresno County alone. And when the creek fire happened in 2020, that devastated about 380,000 acres. And that particular year, I believe, of the 33 million acres of forest in California, we saw between 3 and 4 million acres of forest burn in 2020. So why is this happening? A lot of environmental groups are using the spotted owl, other endangered species out there to stop logging projects and to stop mechanical thinning of the forest. But it has to happen. The city of Clovis was actually established. It was a logging town. It was also a farming town over 100 years ago, but there was a flume that came from Shaver and dumped right into the lumberyard in the downtown Clovis area over 100 years ago, and a lot of that wood helped to build our communities, and that has stopped. The last mill in Fresno County that was really shut down was the Auberry Mill site, and I think that shut down in 1994. But the Auberry Mill, at its heyday, was employing about 250 people in the Prather Auberry area, and it created jobs, it created great opportunities, and it also kept the forest in a healthy state. With the elimination of all these mills, environmentalists wanting to keep people out of the forest, we've seen tremendous growth in the forest, and then with all that die-off, all it took was a spark, and again, the creek fire devastated 380,000 acres between Madera County and Fresno County. So we need to be back in our forests. We need to revive the timber industry. We can generate revenue in the process, and I'm one who believes in stewardship. Stewardship means that we don't ignore our responsibilities. It means that we need to find the safest, most environmental conscious ways to manage our forest. And I believe that we can do that, and we have to do that. If we don't, we're going to continue to see these devastating fires burn California.
Are there any, so it sounds like the issue is reversible, right? Are there any like policies that we're working towards, or that you're working towards, to try to get some of those things done? Like,
So,
and also too, like with that, is there like political will to try and get that done?
I think there's some political will now, because the fires that we've seen over the course of the last 5 or 6 years in California, we've seen more people lose their life. The Paradise Fire, I think over 80 people lost their life in the Paradise Fire that happened 5 or 6 years ago. And then, you know, the devastation that these fires are causing, it's many, many billions of dollars. And so it's gotten the attention of policymakers. And two, environmental groups and legislators who say they believe in climate change and they want to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The number one contributor to greenhouse gas emissions are the forests and the unhealthy state that they're in. When they burn, the particulates that they emit, and again, the greenhouse gases that they emit, far exceed anything that mobile sources are emitting and anything that fossil fuels could emit. So it's gotten the attention of a lot of people, but more work needs to be done in Sacramento. More work needs to be done in Washington. Some people forget that I believe the largest landholder in the United States is actually the federal government. In Fresno County, the forests that we have, about half of the forests are managed by the national parks and the U.S. Forest Service. The other half are managed privately. So we need to see policies at the state, federal, and local levels all working together to, again, get at a healthy forest again.
Awesome. We're done here. Is there anything like last minute things that you want to? And by the way, thank you for joining me. I want to get you out of here on time. Is there any like final thoughts that you want to talk about before we go?
Sure. So I can tell you, I feel blessed, and I'm thankful for the opportunities that I've had over the course of the last 25 plus years to be involved in local government. And I've learned a lot along the way. I've been frustrated along the way too. I've won elections, I've lost elections. But really I want to encourage the viewers that are out there who maybe feel frustrated too about what they're seeing happening in their communities, and challenge them that they should really step forward and get involved. There's opportunities to get appointed to boards. There's opportunities to run for special district elections, school boards, and even council races. There's a lot of city council races, seats that are going to be coming available here in a couple of years. So if you feel passionate about what's taking place in government at all levels, I challenge you to please get involved. And for those viewers that are out there watching right now too, I am always open to criticism and ideas. If you have ideas on how my office can do a better job, please feel free to reach out.
And if they want to reach out, where can they get a hold of you?
So my email address is district5@fresnocountyca.gov. My telephone number is real easy. It's 559-600-5000.
You got lucky. That's an easy number. Again, thank you for being here today. And that's it. We did it. Thank you, everybody, for tuning into the inaugural podcast here. So we'll see what happens.
All right. Thank you.
Sir. I appreciate it.
You got it.
I got you here 2 minutes early.
Yeah.